Thanks for staying with us. This is Daybreak. Here with us this morning, Galma Dido joins us from Berlin in Germany, public policy analyst, Davis Oluoch Odhiambo, member of the Interparties Youth Forum, Mark Ouko, the youth coordinator for the National Students' Council, Askon Kamele and Naima Rajab are advocates of the High Court. Saddam Gashir is the SecGen, the Progress Pliers Alliance Party. So we'll be getting to you, Galma. But first, let's hear what the Chief of Defense Forces a week ago said when he attended a function which was coordinated by the National Intelligence Service at the National Intelligence Research University here in Nairobi County.
So wakati watu wanaamua kwamba tumechoka na hii serikali na mulichagua wenyewe, alafu mnasema must go. That must go must be done according to the constitution. Si ni kweli?
Galma, to you, was this a legitimate warning on the state of affairs, security per se, or it was a case of the military man dipping his hand in the hornet's nest?
Thank you, Ayub. I think this is, first of all, the breach of our country's sovereignty, and, it's a blow when it comes to dividing the roles of, the civilians, the political institution, the executive, and the military. And this is a trend that we've started seeing just also yesterday when we saw the police inspector being given an opportunity to address a political rally. I think, for heaven's sake, when a chief of defense force, somebody who is given the mandate to protect the sovereignty and the safety of this country alongside our borders, commenting on political issue, I think this should be enough to give you really a bad sense of things, or not uncomfortable sense of things, because the last time I've never had a chief of defense force. I've lived through the times of Karanja, Kibochi, and these CDFs, and we've never seen CDFs really dipping their hands politically speaking about this, and it's really not a good place to trade. And I did not get much time to respond to what my colleague said on these issues of broad-based government and everything. As an international student from Kenya who is in Germany, I would say, how broad-based are we, fellow comrades, when our foreign policy as a country is really in tatters? And I'm speaking this because you remember, I think it was on page 60, page 51 or page 60 of the manifesto of the Kenya Kwanza, when President William Ruto said he's going to deliver 1 million jobs a year. And in 2023 October, I think according to tabloids, he said we are only going to deliver 680,000 jobs for the whole of his term. And I will say appointing a young man to the position of a PS is not a sign that young people are going to be placed. We are not looking for representation. We are not looking for inclusion. We are looking for the things to work right. You cannot approach the Saudi government telling that 500,000 Kenyans are going to be hired by the Saudi government. This will not work. Ayub, as I'm currently in Germany, the agreement that the Kenyan and the German government signed saying that 250,000 young people are going to be hired never worked. Because the German authority will never allow you to work here if you are not proficient in German, if you are not proficient in some of the construction skills. It will take you more than 2, 3, 4 years for you to officially get such kind of entities. And I feel we are really not in place to speak about broad-based. I think we should be forward-based when it comes to our policies and how to include young people. Thank you. Okay,
and specifically the advocates here, when the military man talked about the must go, did he fail to appreciate, first beginning with you, Askon, the question of impeachment, where Parliament is vested with the power, where we donate that power to Parliament to impeach even a sitting head of state?
I think what the Chief of Staff was attempting to address, although I may agree with the content of what he was saying, but I don't think it is in his place to come out very boldly to speak about it in the manner that he did. He was just as clear as I would be on the question of how to transition governments. We know we can apply our constitution, ensure we replace our president through an impeachment. We have to wait for 5 years and go for another election. We have processes and procedures that are properly prescribed in the law. And therefore, what he was saying was actually accurate to the extent that he was demanding of us to apply ourselves to the constitution each and every time we want to make a decision on the affairs of running our country. But I'm not very convinced it is in his place to speak about it, and particularly with the choice of words that he used. By saying you elected a leader and now you want to replace him, or you don't like him and you want to tell us must go. That kind of narrative may not be very acceptable, particularly coming from a person who holds an office like his. It may also not be very acceptable coming from a person of the status of the Police Inspector General. They may be saying the right thing, but our Constitution actually envisages that based on the responsibilities that have been bestowed upon them, there are some discussions that they should be able to avoid. Okay. But you may also understand that there is political pressure that defines the manner in which people in such offices behave. You will remember that at one time, former CJ David Maraga, who, I'm pleasantly informed that he's contesting for presidency in the next election, had to join the president at a rally somewhere, hanging on one of the vehicles. And everybody was up in arms asking, you're the Chief Justice, you're going to sit to determine the outcome of an election, and yet you're out there in a political rally with the president. That would have pointed that CJ Maraga had taken sides. But you may also want to understand the political pressure that would come with such offices. Okay. But it's important that we understand that our Constitution provides for the independence of the offices that they hold, and that must be able to act within that space and parameters.
Yeah, Naima.
Yeah, just to add on that, Ayub, that statement left a very bad taste in my mouth. Unlike the military, where probably people do not enjoy their rights, probably following orders here and there, Kenyans have a robust Bill of Rights. Kenyans have a robust Bill of Rights to express themselves. If today I want to say the president must go, nothing limits me. It's not contra-constitution. It is contra-constitution to limit people not to speak on what they want to speak, as long as it is not illegal. And looking at the articles of the Constitution that deal with impeachment of the president, if you look at the wordings of these articles, honestly, you do find that it's almost impossible to impeach a president, especially if we're going through the parliament route. It's all about party politics in parliament. How will they impeach their party leader? If you're looking at Article 142 that deals with impeachment, not impeachment really, dealing with the immunity of the president against
private prosecution.
And private prosecution. So at the end of it, it talks about that the immunity does not extend to external treaties that the countries have signed. So if you're looking at the president, traveling to ISIS, to a country that is governed by a treaty that, he can be arrested for issues like what was witnessed in the Gen Z demonstrations. Maybe these are the articles that can help us impeach the president. That and maybe the popular initiative through a referendum. But when you're looking at Article 144 and 143 through the parliament, I feel like Kenyans will just be, having a wild goose chase. We know our MPs.
Okay.
Yes.
But if you may allow me just briefly, I could agree with Wakili to an extent that they're provided for mechanisms for, finding remedies whenever we feel that there are challenges with our governance system. But what I think the Chief of Staff was attempting to paint out there, which for me is very important, is that we need to apply ourselves to the Constitution. We can't be speaking from both sides of the mouth, where as Kenyans, we are demanding that the president must follow the law. We are demanding that our leaders must follow the law. But when it comes to how the president should be replaced, we want to generate excuses that, the impeachment of the president may not be very possible, so we can go out in the streets, demand that he leaves office, and actually we achieve that. It's not very advisable to go that direction because we don't want to fall into anarchy. It is important that we have to understand.
Okay.
If you want to go through impeachment, Deputy President Gachagua was impeached successfully. It has proven that it is very possible. For the very first time, an election of the president was, turned by the Supreme Court. So it is very possible that actually the President of the Republic of Kenya can be impeached, but we have to apply ourselves to the law.
Okay.
The other option that we have is to wait for 5 years, go to the elections, organize, and vote against that president.
Okay.
It is possible.
Okay. Davis, coming to you. Do you agree when the Director General of the Intelligence Service says, quote, divisive politics has found a new breeding ground on our social media platforms. This is polarizing our people and undermining national cohesion. Yet national cohesion goes hand in hand with national security. Are Kenyans misusing social media, or they're using the same as an avenue to vent out?
First, I want to say that I love the military and what they have been doing and the NIS. And I want to say that using her words, that the speech left a bad taste in her mouth. Because 1 year ago, we lost a CDF, and to date, we've not been told the circumstances under which he died. So, coming from that gentleman to this political speech left a bad taste in my mouth. Secondly, I want to say that coming from the CDF to the NIS director, to yesterday's director, the inspector of police, looks like there is a targeted messaging that these people are trying to pass through. What I'll say, Ayub, according to your question, is that social media is a tool. Because what we've realized, more so as young people, and Interparties Youth Forum is a caucus that brings together all political youth leagues, what we've realized is that we don't have power as young people, and we don't have resources as young people, and we don't have a lot of things that supports politics. So that's why most of the time we are marginalized as young people in politics. But then social media comes in, and we can have our own podcasts, we can have our Twitter conversations while we are far. Some are in Kisumu, some are in Mombasa, some are in Nairobi. We can actually hold a conversation and talk about our issues. We can have WhatsApp groups, we can have Twitter spaces, we can have Facebook comments and posts and accounts. So social media helps us as young people currently, Ayub. I want to say that I want to disagree with my friend in Germany. He's actually a member of IPYF. He was coming from UDM, that we didn't ask for his representation. We need representation in the government. And today, Fikrini Jacobs is facing the vetting panel in Parliament. And I wish him well as a PS in charge of youth affairs. We need representation as young people. We need healthcare as young people. We need quality and affordable education as young people. We need political representation. So my friend from Germany is saying that we don't need representation. That one is a no. Yes, Mark.
Now, three things. One, three things. Now, one, in my own view, in a very fair assessment of what the CDF said, I don't think there was any alarming issue that the CDF said. Because one, when you talk about Ruto, remember, many people think about him only as a head of government. But remember, Ruto is also the head of state. And one of the functions as head of state is that he is a symbol of national unity. So when the name of the president, the person whom currently holds the position of head of state and has the function of symbol national unity, erupts a sense that this might cause some sense of instability within the nation. I think contextually, I don't think there's any problem if the CDF raises this. Secondly, I will also want to say this, and I've often opined this. The first objective of any government in power is often political stability. That's why the president would go mild, say, for example, if it takes the effort to bring, say, such a national figure such as Raila Amolo into government, so that it can just bring political stability. Look at countries such as our neighbors, such as Sudan. Look at DRC. Number of them are not even able to have such a spaces such as this to express themselves. Anything cannot roll out fairly well in a country where is political instability. It will be even hard for you to come here at Royal Media. Secondly,
but the point is, Mark, different contexts. Sudan is totally a different ball game altogether, given the bread protests that had. Yes, Galma, you will respond shortly. Allow me to follow up on this, because the bread protests had removed President Omar al-Bashir. South Sudan's case is totally different, given the fallout from the onset of the independence 2 years in 2013, after 2011, 2013. How do you then compare, and what's the stability that Odinga will bring on board? I mean, how does our democracy work? Isn't it not a case of more or less a mongrel outlook?
No. I'm trying to say, of course, I do agree with you. Like, it's contextual from different countries, but like the fundamental is that if you do not have a political stable country, if there's political intolerance within the country, you cannot run a country. If people are protesting every Tuesday, you cannot run a country.
But it's the problem by politicians, is it? Why the people are protesting? I mean, if you look at even the Azimio protest in 2023, it was all about the cost of living, education, infrastructure, the system which doesn't work. So the blame game is then that it's the same politicians who are putting us in this position, is it?
No, but you see, this is the thing. Generally, when you look at the way, the approach that President Ruto has taken in terms of solving the issues that are facing the country, he has taken a popular approach. The popular approach that most Kenyans expect is a physical maintenance or a physical development approach of dealing with things. Say, when people see the president building schools, like the way most people see what Ndindi Njoro is doing in Kiharu, they see that as development. What the president is doing is that he has taken a systematic approach of building the nation. So that's why, but the only problem with the president is that he wants to do everything, so many things that go. He wants to change the health system from NIH to SHA, the new funding model system, changing the subsidy program into, changing our taxation program. So I think for the president, he's trying to just change the systematic way of doing things which does not come. But lastly, allow me to say this. I've been on the ground, and I think people do not have a problem with the president. I think in the ground, people love the president. I was in the ground. The thing that you're saying about Ichungu and all this, it's just a petty politics around local politics where you find somebody like Methu sponsoring some few young people. And this is normally really easy to see. When you're in the ground, if you do not organically see everybody chanting against a leader, or you see just a section, that one people who have been hired.
And that's an allegation that you can prove here.
Yes, I can prove because I was there.
Something very important. Galma, yes, just let me allow Saddam to make his point.
Yeah, I want to respond on the issue of broad-based. Broad-based has really borrowed heavily on 1980 Museveni ideology, where the broad-based is a survival tool for the political class. Unfortunately, it has very little to do with the people's interest, and the president of Kenya holds President Museveni as his mentor. The other thing of the CDF and Inspector General of Police moving into political spaces, for me, it is very unfortunate. It is they're instilling fear and a delay tactic to ensure that the people's uprising doesn't really take off smoothly and creates fears and hiccups in the movement. It is very sad that this administration has gone ahead and created 3 political parties without not visiting the office of the ORPP.
Which are these parties?
KDF party, we have the NIS movement, and the last one we have the National Police Service also as a party.
So these are not political parties.
It is very unfortunate that they're moving into these political spaces. If it's the route that they would love to take, I wish that they can just leave the disciplined forces and move into politics. I also have a problem with people disfranchising the institutions and constitutional offices, where, for example, CDF offices are being used to hire teachers. It's no longer the TSC, the Teacher Service Commission, doing that work. It doesn't sit well with the young people. Since we are only looking for service delivery, we are looking for constitutionalism and the rule of law. Another thing that maybe we would love is development and service delivery. It doesn't sit well when you have the administration of the day doing so much PR gimmicks with power. The problem of Kenya today is not leadership.
Okay.
It is how power is being used. Another problem is we don't lack resources. It's the people who are managing these resources that are using them to their own beneficial and to their own advantage.
Okay, I'll come to you, Naima, and ask on, but first, Galma, you had, you wanted to respond. Yes, please.
Thank you. First of all, comrades, I don't think our president is a symbol of national unity. For heaven's sake, gone are the days when we were in high school and primary schools and we could cram the names of cabinet secretaries and the permanent secretaries by names and their titles and everything. I hardly even remember one member of our cabinet currently who is serving in this government. And convince me, fellow Kenyans, when when I checked the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, I think it was on page 6060, President William Ruto said, in the fundamental rights and administrative of justices, he is going to end all forms of extrajudicial execution by security services and establishing the Coroner General's Office per the National Coroners Act of 2017. Instead of this, we've gotten a president who called the 70% of the Kenyan population, the young people, criminals. You remember very well, these are not something that I'm really putting here to allegedly paint the president in a bad way. The sense of symbol of national unity for a president is a president whose policies can be predicted. A symbol of national unity is a presidency when you don't have to do public relations and over-announcing the projects. We never had that during Kibaki's time. You could just see kick polio out of Kenya, free primary education, Isiolo, Nairobi, Moyale, Marsabit, Isiolo, Moyale highway, everything completed. Instead, we've been left to a government that has been reduced to publishing, or a government that is reduced to over-announcing on the policies that they have not implemented. You can see a good case with what happened with the housing policies. I feel like the mode of our housing policy that PS, Hinga tried to put across was a sense of poor public participation and poor communication to the people of Kenya. And at the end of the day, when Kenyans don't agree with these policies, we've not agreed with a good number of policies that President William Ruto brought. The housing policy, the rebranding of our institution, the merger of our institution, the privatization, the outlook of our foreign policy as we are speaking. These are the things that Kenyans, if indeed we really feel our president is a symbol of national unity, we should be included. As I complete with this word, it is very embarrassing today. A few years ago, Kenya was leading in the front of being a non-permanent member of United Nations Security Council. The leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta was chairing the African Union Security Council. Currently, Kenya was really doing well when it comes to solving the Tigray-Ethiopian conflict. But we've seen all that erased. For the first time, Kenya is taking a position on the Congo-Rwanda war. We've blundered a lot when it comes to our AUC bid, and it has nothing to do with tribalism. It has everything to do with how tarnished our image when it comes to foreign policy. And even for heaven's sake, when was the last time President rallied the call of national unity, answering your question, my brother, of truly convincing Kenyans why we are sending our forces to Haiti? Do we have any economic interest with a country that is more than thousands and thousands of miles away from us? Recently, we hosted a foreign illegal entity of RSF. As a country, if indeed President William Ruto is a symbol of national unity, did we have any kind of memo from his permanent secretary? Why are we interfering with other countries' foreign affairs? Okay. So if indeed you feel that President William Ruto, of which I would have given it to him, is a symbol of national unity, then these are the questions that he should have answered to us in different spectrum. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm then Askon.
Yeah, just to add on what my colleague has said, President Ruto is not a symbol of national unity. I will repeat again, he is not a symbol of national unity.
Why do you say so?
I say so because a few weeks ago, the Minority and Marginalized Unit from the Office of the President was in Kibra constituency. And they came there because to see the Nubians as the minority communities. And the secretary stood up and said, you know, Nubians do not have jobs because you're not educated. I stood up and told him, I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I did apply for the Attorney General's position of State Counsel. I have met all the qualifications. I am the only Nubian who has applied for that position. Do you know that no single Muslim was shortlisted in Nairobi? No single Nubian was shortlisted in the whole country? And the department itself, hear the name, Minority and Marginalized Unit. There is no single minority in that unit. Even the leader of that unit, the secretary, is from his tribe. So how is that, if you do not have a minority in this department, how will you relate to minorities? The whole department is full of his tribesmen. So when you say he's a symbol of national unity, I'm looking at these units in the Office of the Presidency. Where is the representation of all the other 42 tribes of Kenya? Where is it?
Okay, Ayub to Mark and David.
Well, Ayub, I think we should widen our spectrum of view on this subject and get to really delve deep into why Raila was brought into the government, or why the president had to engage with Raila Odinga. And I like the example that you just gave, the example of Sudan. Just a few years ago when Bashir was still president, there was the same noise as we had in Kenya with the Gen Z in Sudan. And you'll remember there was a lady who was leading the chant and things went down so fast. It has not taken so many years before Sudan today is totally unstable. Now, that is where Kenya was by the time President Ruto had to engage with Raila Odinga. We had it's okay. We had a Gen Z movement that was so agitated, and we had a government that was so held on the corner, and we were almost falling down the cliff. Now, the only remedy that was there was engaging with the opposition leader, who was Raila Odinga, to stabilize the political space. That was very important to the extent that if the Gen Z were able to run President Ruto out of power, disorganized as they were, the military would have kicked in, because they would have not allowed the country to fall. And if the military were to kick in, the military would have been disjointed into 2 or 3 or so many other compartments, as the same is happening in Sudan. Now, with the benefit of foresight, Kenya would have not been the same today. So we have to really, I know there is the urge to oppose government in Kenya. I know Kenyans are naturally active citizens. I know our activism may be unmeasured to a certain level, but we also have to widen our spectrum of view and understand that we have a country to keep, and we have borders to ensure that are safe. I understand part of the concerns that my brother has raised, particularly concerning the steps the president has taken towards remedying the challenges that the youth are facing in this country. But he's been very bold in outlining that the youth do not demand a space on the decision-making table, that the youth did not ask for inclusion, that the youth did not ask for representation. I beg to differ. I mean, it all begins with representation. Today, when we have the PS of Youth Affairs, who is a young person, we have all the rights to demand from him that you have been part of the youth movement, and you've been demanding for a space so that you'd be able to implement some of the ideas that we have. Why is this not the case? Today we have the Cabinet Secretary for Water, who was my comrade, Engineer Eric Muga. I mean, I have all the rights to inquire from Engineer Eric Muga. You are been appointed into that position as a representation of your generation. Okay. It is expected of you to help the president to ensure that the young people of this country get things better done and better organized. But
that's two comparisons here, because it's a case of you now expressing the apples and the oranges debate here. President Ruto was subjected to a vigorous democratic process, which he won. That was not the case for Omar al-Bashir before he was deposed. I mean, there was coup after coup, and the history of Sudan is replete with the same, and the military junta taking over. President Ruto, unlike Bashir, had constitutional organs which he would delegate powers. Did he, from the onset, lose the confidence of the young people who went to the streets by virtue of composing his cabinet? Look at the people who he had lined up. The very same people who 1 year later he said, "You are incompetent, I know more than you do in your own dockets." I mean, did he fail to harvest the confidence at the first place, given that we are a democracy unlike Sudan, and therefore the comparisons which are inaccurate in this case?
I agree with you. And actually, President Ruto, at one of the conversations he had with the young people on Twitter, he actually conceded to this concerns that the young people had. You have incompetent cabinet secretaries, you have some leaders who speak carelessly. I mean, like the one you were just mentioning a few minutes ago, somebody saying that young people are, intoxicated, and that's why they're shouting all over social media. Such are the reasons why the president had to have a sit down with young people and explain the remedy and the remedial measures he's going to take to ensure that things are better. Okay. But the reason why I'm demanding that we widen our spectrum of view is we need to understand, besides the fact that Bashir's and Sudan's case was different from ours, where were we? We were in a situation that it didn't matter what the constitution was saying. It didn't matter what the president should have done. What mattered at that point was we had an agitated community of young people who were advancing to State House, who were advancing beyond Parliament, and our security was threatened. The only solution was to have a political solution to the problem. And the only political solution was to engage with Raila.
Yes, Adamis. I'll come to you, Makan.
Allow me to come in, Ayub. You see, the inclusion of Raila Odinga into this administration does not stop the young people from this agitation. All we wanted for during the June 25th protest was rule of law, service delivery. We rejected the finance bill. You see, the finance bill came as a result of public participation, where Kenyans from all walks of life came in and said they were not confident and didn't approve the current taxation and clauses in the finance bill. This was not forthcoming. The administration through the National Assembly went ahead and passed the bill, not listening to our key. The interventions that we are looking for, especially by the military and the disciplined forces, is fear-mongering amongst the people of Kenya, of which it won't culminate into anything. The elephant in the room is abduction. Why are they busy lecturing us on what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be saying, as opposed to them giving us solutions to who is abducting the young people of this country? It is not fair for them to sit in a corner and allow us not to express ourselves. It is an entitlement that we have under Article 33, freedom of expression.
Allow me to ask you this.
Yeah.
Because even the deployment of the military on our streets for the first time in 42 years, the last time was in 1982.
That's how bad the situation was.
Yeah.
It's because of our political culture, is it? So what would have happened, hypothetically, if President Ruto had resigned on the night of June 25th?
If after his resignation, the deputy president would have taken office.
Would Rigathi Gachagua have been any better?
I wouldn't want to answer in the affirmative, but procedurally, the deputy president would have taken office, and we would be going for an election maybe in the next 30 days for him. Maybe he will appoint a deputy after the exit of H.E. Ruto.
Yeah, because that is a fundamental question here. And then, Davis, I come to you on this. The issues that were listed by young Kenyans were very pertinent. They touched on governance, they touched on the state of service delivery. And there's a wholesale failure, if you mention the political gallery, including the president and the former prime minister. Let me say the whole catalogue of the Kanu boys in our political system. However, what would have happened then in the aftermath of then had the president and the deputy president that night resigned? What would happen? Where would we be? Did the young people visualize how Kenya would look like?
Thank you.
Ayub, I want to say that I don't look Gen Z, but I'm actually a Gen Z.
Yes, please.
And I was on the streets. And I also want to say that before being a Secretary General of IPYF, I'm a member of the ODM party. And ODM has called for an election, and I might actually be standing to be the youth leader of ODM in the next election. But I want to say that broad-based has been talked about here, and my party leader has been talked about here. So I want to really comment that I had a sit down with the party leader. I was actually in the section of people in the party who were opposed to joining the government. Actually, there were two factions. There were people who said, no, we have been out of the government for too long, with the opposition for too long, we now need to go to government and have something. There are people who said, no, we can't join the government. I was in the opposed team. But I want to agree with Ascon that at that time, I had a sit down with the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister. And I want to agree with Ascon that at that time, the country was in a bad state. And we needed a conversation. And the party leader asked for a dialogue. And I think that's where the country and the Gen Z went wrong. When my party leader called for a dialogue, we could have been seated somewhere in Bomas with a neutral moderator, maybe Center for Multi-Party Democracy or the Citizen TV, and moderate and have youth talk about their issues, have women talk about their issues, have tribal people, there are people who are tribal in this country, talk about their issues, and have the media talk about their issues, and have the government talk about their issues, and come out there with a solution. But then the Gen Z said, we don't want a dialogue. We don't want a conversation. Ayub, what I'm thinking, at that point, we needed a conversation. Because, Ayub, what you've asked my brother is that would Nani be any better, Rigathi Gachagua? Let me tell you, I don't subscribe to the politics of Honorable Rigathi Gachagua. Rigathi Gachagua is based in the mountain. And I think he could have been better being a the spokesman of the Mount Kenya, or a governor, or the regional kingpin, but not the vice president and not the potential president.
Is that then by extension a problem that we put at the doorstep of the president for handpicking Rigathi Gachagua against the democratic process of MPs electing Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki as his running mate.
Actually, Ayub, that's where I was coming from. And that's why I want to agree with that CDF. It's only that the CDF shouldn't say that. That should be said by Raila. That should be said by Uhuru Kenyatta, who told these people that this Ruto is not a good person to be elected president, but then Kenyans went ahead to elect a president. I want to say that I'm a strategic person, and before going to the ballot or before choosing ODM as my party, I went to the gallery and asked, President William Ruto has been in politics for the last 30 years. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga has been in politics for the last 30 years. What has then Ruto done to the people that can guarantee electing him as president? He's been a minister of agriculture, a minister of higher education. He's been a member of parliament. And I saw that there's nothing substantial.
He was a KANU stalwart in 1992.
Yes, it was a YK92. I didn't see anything reasonable of electing Ruto as president. And then what came in, Ruto elected Rigathi as his deputy to make it worse. Then, if you wanted to know that Ruto couldn't make a good president, you could have seen by the selection of his cabinet. The president went on to pick Aisha Jumwa, pick Moses Kuria. Then you say we are not going anywhere. And then he said that we are in a grim state. In such a grim state when the coffers were dry, the president could have been intelligent enough to give experts like John Mbadi by then. John Mbadi, we could have been very fine. If John Mbadi
Ayub, something very important. I would like you to direct that question.
Allow me to get to Galma.
I would like you to
get to Galma. And Mark, I'll come to you. I know you have, you want to come in. Galma, then going forward, is it healthy that the mantra of partyless and leaderless should be the position that the Gen Zs should hold, given that the IEBC now seeks to register about 5.7 million young Kenyans who will make up 80% of the voters registered in the next election?
Thank you so much, Ayub. First of all, the aspect of partyless and the aspect of leaderless was justified at that time. You are dealing with a group of individuals who took to the street. These are thousands of young people who took to the street without having any political affiliation. For the first time, I was convinced that I don't need political party for my grievances to be heard. I just need the Kenyan Constitution. And for me to get what the Kenyan president promised me in his manifesto, I did not force him to deliver these things for me. It is by his entitlement as the leader of this country that he is supposed to deliver for these young people. These are the groups of people who are promised laptops. These are the groups of people, who are promised endless opportunities when it comes to even the transition of CBC and other opportunities. I mean, that will be Gen Alpha, but the issues that were happening before. This is something that has been done already. Bangladesh is currently I'm in touch with one of their youth leaders. They are forming their political party. I feel like when I look at, and I'm sorry to really irritate my brother from ODM, when I look at ODM manifesto, UDM manifesto, ANC manifesto, there is no difference. There is no sense of ideology. There is no sense of hope. It's all antagonism. If if UDA is saying +1, ODM is saying -1. If the other one is saying this, you cannot see any kind of idealistic promises that you can really see from these manifestos. For the sake of this debate, the name jobs was mentioned 31 times in Kenya Kwanza's manifesto, the UDA manifesto. It was mentioned 31 times. And this is the president, if indeed he was really holistic about solving the issues that youth raised in the Gen Z protest. There are thousands of young people who have been hired by Public Service Commission as interns. We are yet to see these thousands of interns permanently getting absorbed into the public sector. The other day, he floated the idea that a good chunk of National Youth Service members who are young people will be able to peacefully transition into the army and the disciplined forces. We are yet to see that. Go ahead, as I've mentioned earlier. Our president said 500,000 jobs are going to be offered by the Saudi government. I don't know even the details of that. So I feel when it comes to the election as a process, we will need a political party. But the culmination of what young people are standing for and what the Gen Zs are pushing for as far as this is concerned, we just need our constitution. It has elaborated the roles of every leader, the roles of the civilians, which should be expected of us, as like ensuring that the values of good citizenship is upheld amongst ourselves, and also what is expected of the elected leaders. So I believe, Ayub, going forward, we might need political party just as a tool to represent ourselves into the parliament, but I don't think we are going to need that, enriched, deep, well-faceted political engagement like now we are seeing with broad-based government for us to be politically hard. We just need to use our constitution. Thank you.
Yeah, and to just ask you this, because it's important, Ascon also mentioned this, and so did Mark. The question of the broad-based aspect, which is a version of the handshake we had in 2018. How does it work in Germany? Explain to us, because it's more or less, again, a political crisis in Europe's biggest economy. Now, Friedrich Merz will be coming in to replace Olaf Scholz, but you have the alternative for Deutschland, which is rising, the AfD. How does it work in such an economy, huge, an aging population? How do they unlock their political problems?
So actually, Ayub, when it comes to the aspect of Europe and Germany, these guys have their values that are entrenched into their governance system. And for the case of Germany, is honesty and trust. When somebody is elected into the leadership position, there are some key values that is associated with them. And that's why you see it's very high cases, a leader to resign in Europe. And you will get the case of the likes of Amos Kimunya, our very own, saying, I would rather die than resign. For them, they feel if the values that they propagated or stood for is not compatible with the values of the larger society, then there is no need for them to serve.
Okay.
But that is something that is really changing currently. The party that you've mentioned, the Alternative for Deutschland, is really scored big numbers in the recent election that was held in March.
Okay.
They scored close to 21%. And even with the discussion of the far right and the far left, one thing that really, most Germans agree on is the creation of jobs, is the use of tech, and majorly the aspect of free markets and the use of, the EU systems, so that the aspect of mobility, the aspect of production, the aspect of innovation is something that will not be determined by whatever the political party that comes abroad. So for them, they have a bare minimum on areas that should not be touched on. This is educational funding, research, climate change, it's a bit debatable. Immigration is something that is also very, it's a hot topic. But issues like innovation, mobility, transport, technology, and the aspect of government efficiency is what I feel like is lacking in our country, because you really tend to find political parties not agreeing on these key issues. Thank you.
Yes, Mark.
Now, I'll say three quick things. Now, one, on the issue about, I talked about symbol of unity that I think has been quite disputed here. It's a symbol of unity is not a popularity contest as to whether Ruto is popular or non-popular to decide whether there's a symbol of unity. This is a constitutional functional unit. And that's why sometimes when people ask, why is Ruto going to open a pit latrine, say, in Kakamega, or going to open a road, say, in Mandera? Because this is the thing. Those people in the ground, forget about this all noise you hear in the social media. For the people there in the ground, when they see the president physically there, they feel that sense of inclusion, that pride that those thousands of people say in Kakamega and a constituency, when they pass through a gate or some building, something that is very minute, and they see that has been opened by the president, they feel a sense of like we were part of this government. Now, secondly, there's a question here has been asked, why was Raila Amolo Odinga brought into government or at the height of the Gen Z? For two reasons. One, because when you looked at the Gen Z, the most surprising factor about them was volatility. Now, you ask yourself, how do you deal with this volatility? Because the volatility is what was making them Tuesday. 1 minute they say, now it's not Tuesday, we are doing Tuesday, Thursday. 1 minute Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. How do you deal with volatility? You look for the most volatile characters. And the most volatile characters in terms of the political spectrum of Kenya is the ODM characters. These are the people whom 1 minute they can decide we are removing the rail. When you decide and bring in Raila. You know, Raila controls a huge part. The ODM people are the most volatile people. I'm telling you.
Volatility in terms of?
Volatility in terms of expressing their rights. You know, these are people, if, for example, Raila Odinga says today we are going to the streets, it will be extremely volatile. I'm telling you, Rigathi Gachagua does not have supporters whom will go to the streets. So there's a lot of political complexity when it comes to dealing with something.
Is it not a problem then, Mark, when you have you have 5,000 young Kenyans who follow you? What does that tell us about the state of our economy? I mean, on a Monday, if you call for a political rally and they are all present.
No, but you see, you know, some of these things.
Would you now, for example, be heeding such a call? If
no. But you see, these are things which have been historically built. If somebody like Raila,
that doesn't mean that we continue with the problem. The point is then, what does it tell us about the state of? Fundamentally, this is the question. Would you today heed the call of a political leader if he tells you on Monday we're meeting at Uhuru Park?
I mean, I think globally everywhere, there's no problem when people follow a certain political leader.
The point is, what does it tell about you? Either idleness, I mean, you have no job, you're underemployed.
No, I think...
Is that not exploitation of an already vulnerable population?
No, but listen, what happens, Ayub, is not just in the political space where you see people demonstrating. Lawyers do demonstrate, doctors do demonstrate. So if something does align with you, if, say, even, for example, a journalist were today, there's some problem, and say one of your senior colleagues says, Jeff Koinange says, as journalists, let's go to the streets to represent, say, one of us, because you would go because you feel like you're inclined to that. So, and it also in the same, so I think it's because in politics it happens more often than then we think that these people are more idle. But doctors do strike, teachers do strike, most people do strike.
But the context of those strikes are different.
Yes. But the now the third thing that I wanted to say, the third one. Yes, the third one. I want to say this. I think the young people, although we are still the hugest political constituents in terms of our numbers, but we must apply ourselves to the reality as things still stand. If elections was to be held today, and I've said this many times, William Samoei Ruto will take it very early because he has a very organized minority. His numbers are organized. While as the young people, we are still the majority. We are not organized in terms of politics, in the long-term sense of things. So that's why I'm still applying to the idea that William Samoei Ruto is going to take it very easily. Briefly. 2027.
So, as Ascon normally says, it's a democracy, so we leave that to the people of There will be 28 million registered. Yes, briefly, then I come to Saddam and Asconia.
Ayub, I want to talk about broad-based. And broad-based is not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good English, something broad-based. Ayub, there was I think, State House Comptroller who was called Nzioki Waita. Nzioki Waita goes on stage on Engage.
He is the Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff. And he says that he's been in State House where resources are being distributed to communities. And Nzioki Waita says that some communities that are deemed to be outside government do not get a share of resources. They just get the bare minimum. That's why I agreed with some people who said that we need to go broad-based, so that there are people who've been humiliated for far too long because they seem to be in opposition, political parties in opposition areas. So the issue of broad-based should include the minority, all the tribes, and the young people, and the women, and all religions. So to that extent, I agree with broad-based. On the issues of
broad-based in the aspect of the two parties, William Ruto and Raila Odinga, right?
Okay, are you bound to say
what then happens to Parliament? What's Parliament's role? I mean, how can resources be shared at State House? What does that tell us about the state of our governance?
That's where I go to Mark and say that the issue is not with the young people on the street. The issue is with the leadership and the governance. But also I agree with him that some of these issues have been there for some long time and they need a conversation or maybe a twist to the Constitution and maybe some checks and balances. The Parliament has failed us. That one I have to admit. The Parliament have failed us. I want to talk about the ideology of our political party. And Mark says that we are volatile. And my brother from Germany says that our politics doesn't have an ideology. ODM is a liberal political party.
Copy and paste of our manifestos. That is what I say.
What I'm saying, we have an ideology as a political party. We've been running for 20 years. We know what we are in here for. And by the way, Ayub, we go to the streets, but when not to that extreme. And that's why sometimes we tone down. Because the liberal values don't allow room for anarchy. That's why we are a center-left political party. We are not a radical political party. And some point, country comes first before then the political party. When the country is, should be a bipartisan. Okay. Let's say, Ayub, that let's say Al-Shabaab attacks us. The president will need a bipartisan approach to this issue because it's a country issue.
Okay.
So what I'm thinking is that at that time, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga was right. At that time, broad-based, to some extent, is right. But Ayub, I say that we need a dialogue as a nation, even to date.
Okay. Yeah. Briefly, out of time. Ascon, coming to you. 1.5 minutes, 1.5, then we sample the feedback.
Okay. Mine will be very brief. There's a question that you had asked earlier, which I actually think should be directed to generally the youth population in Kenya. The question of, imagine that President Ruto was to throw in the towel and resign. And we have a deputy president who equally resigns and the speaker resigns. I mean, have we imagined where the country would have been? If we are able to answer that question, then we would then understand the reason why we need to really be very critical in applying our minds to the Constitution and the procedures that have been put in place to ensure that we have seamless transitions of government. Okay. Besides that, we have a number of things that are very important. When President Kibaki was in power, he didn't get much support from the population. I actually remember before 2007, there are so many places in this country where President Kibaki wouldn't step in. I remember the same with Moi, I remember the same with Uhuru, and now it's happening to Ruto. So this must-go thing is not a very new thing. However, we need to be very measured in our activism. We need to really understand the point where politics ends and nationalism kicks in. Okay. We need to understand that there was at a point where Donald Trump was defeated and his vice president did not just have to blindly follow him, had to come out and say that, I mean, the situation as is demands that then we have to take a different direction. We have to also understand why when, actually I've supported Raila for a very long time, but for the very first time, I understood why when we are almost kicking out the president, then he has to back down, because then he elevates himself to a higher position and is able to have a panoramic view of the entire country and understand where we are. But finally, there's something that is very important here. The state of electricity power supply in Homa Bay County is actually very wanting. We have not heard our senator speak about it and demand for a question and answer session with the Minister of Energy. The Minister of Energy is led by Honorable Pio Wandai. We haven't heard our MPs call for answers on the floor of the House. We are demanding that in Homa Bay County, the Kenya Power Company and the Minister of Energy must do something to ensure that we have proper electricity supply.
Yes, Naima.
Mine is simple, Ayub. My fellow panelists you know, saying Raila came into the picture for purpose of unity and, you know, bringing Kenyans together. But we saw at the height of the Gen Z demonstrations, Raila was silent. Raila went ahead to vie for the AU position. This broad-based government came because he lost the AU position. I think we need to get that very clear.
The arrangement came before the campaigns?
No, before.
June?
Before.
Even before his official launch, which was in August last year.
So what would have happened if he won?
That he goes quiet.
What would have happened if he won the AU position? Because I'm looking at broad-based with regard to what? Articles of the Constitution. Look at Article 100. When you're saying something is broad, it needs to include everybody. And it forms part of the constitutional, what are these?
Provisions.
Not provisions. You see, inclusivity, equity, these are some of the things that need to be in the broad-based government. But what we're seeing right now, really, I feel it's just more of, you know, some selfish conundrum of somebody always being in power. I don't feel he's there for Kenyans, and we will see it in the long run.
Okay, yes, Adam.
Thank you, Ayub. First and foremost, whatever we're experiencing today needs a political solutions. That's why we, in the Progressive Plus Alliance, have decided as young people to come up together, progressive minds to form a political party. We are inviting everybody to come on board. Let us look for these solutions. Together, we're inviting technical people, expertise, anything that you can bring on board to help us find a political solution. Secondly, in 2027, 56.4% of us, the millennials and the Gen Z, we will be able to win any political seat that we want, including the presidency. Let young people come together, leave alone this entity of tribalism and ethnicity and regionalism. Let's come and converge. Let us find solutions to our problems. You cannot have old guards finding solutions for us who current solutions, whereas they are the main problem of whatever is afflicting us today.
Okay, so let's sample the feedback and then I'll give you your final remarks here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X is Citizen DayBreak. Bobo Tieno says youths are toothless dogs. They come out in large numbers with genuine grievances and end up sleeping with the same people they are complaining are infringing their rights. The so-called political bigwigs like we have witnessed with the Gen Z. Nyamogo says, since the opposition leader has abdicated his constitutional role of oversight, it's now the duty of Kenyans to keep the government in check through social media, and that's exactly what the Gen Z is doing. Gabi Wakasiaka says, unless we, the youth, come out in 2027 and occupy these positions, we won't see change. Power is taken, not given. This is a clarion call to all the youth. Let's rise and occupy the positions. Sir Nixon Dugure says, I think the national youth Ruto must go call is just a simple message that come 2027, they will not vote for Ruto. This might go on for the remaining 28 months to the general election. May peace, love, and unity prevail. Again, says Owino Bob from the CDF General Kahariri's warning against Ruto must go to IG Kanja addressing a political rally attended by the president. It signals that the government is either panicking and heading towards dictatorship or we are a banana republic. Engineer Lazaro says security chiefs taken to the podium to make political statement is contrary to the law and sets a bad precedent for their juniors. Eric Warren says it's painful to say young Kenyans ignore our country's struggles. Do they really believe small handouts will sustain their families for years? We must wake up, unite and demand real change rather than settling for tokens that only distract us from the bigger picture. The last one is from Frank Orinde, says, it is reckless for government officials to dismiss the Gen Z concerns and blanketly brand them as drug addicts. Gen Z is raising legitimate issues, corruption, the high cost of living and poor government policies, incompetence, issues that resonate with all Kenyans. Strictly a minute each. So Galma, beginning with you, your final comments.
Yeah, to the Kenyan people and to the young people who went to the streets, your efforts did not go, in vain. The offshoot of what we are seeing is what we shall be sustaining. We don't need political parties for now for us to make our points heard. We just need proper accountability. We need the use of constitution. And for the sake, the president should not even be concerned with what his policies are. He should be more concerned with the office itself, with the presidency itself. And I urge every Kenyan politician, for their own sake and for the sake of this country, and to urge the opposition, the former leader of opposition, Raila Amolo Odinga, this time round, just leave a legacy. Give the young people the voice that they want to be heard.
Okay.
And apparently, the voice that they want to hear is not your voice. It is the voice of the Constitution. It is not the voice of the broad-based. It is not the voice of the gains of AUC and everything. The young people in this country, we might need representation and inclusion, but what we need more is for the things to work right. Okay. That is it. We don't need popular things. We don't need over-ambitious and realistic or idealistic things. We just need to work right for this country. Thank you so much.
Yes, Mark.
I will say just two quick things. One, for the thing about Gen Zs forming a political party and all that. In the Kenyan context, political parties must have faces. And this is something that most Gen Zs do not want. But for you to have a huge following, especially in political parties, you need faces. ODM is Raila Amolo Odinga. Without Raila Amolo Odinga, there's no ODM. We only know PLP because of Martha Karua. Wiper is Wiper because of Kalonzo Musyoka. So in the terms of political parties, Jesus need to have faces. And lastly, I would also need to say this. Kenyans need to just remain united. 2027 is a very long way to go. We do not know. Even you might be surprised to see Rigathi Gachagua going back to William Samoei Ruto if factors will remain, because politics is a very long way to go by 2027.
Yes, yes, David.
So we don't know what will happen.
Yes.
So
Chinua Achebe asks, where are the young suckers who will grow when the old banana dies? And Pierre Lumumba says that politics is a relay baton that another generation hands over to another generation. I think the likes of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga have something to account in heaven when God asks them, what did you do with the talents I gave you? The likes of Raila Odinga, the William Rutos will say we fought for the second liberation, but Ruto didn't fight for the second liberation. Now it's upon our generation to take it upon themselves on what we can do. Ayub, I want to say that thank you so much for having us here. And I think young people should organize into 2027. Let's organize. And I want to say that if Dr. William Samoei Ruto will not deliver, then we will get him out of office. Thank you so much. And I wish all members of ODM, we're going into elections next week.
Yes.
A good elections. And I'm also be vying. So Ayub, you can also wish me well. Thank you so much.
All the very best. Yes, that's good.
I'm very happy for my brother who is contesting for position in the ODM party, because I have been a member and I know it's quite a difficult process. Now, Ayub, it's very important that young Kenyans understand how crucial a place we hold in this country. And we need to come out, but come out and apply ourselves to the law. We must also understand that going out there, becoming unrealistically agitated, fighting for our rights, we want to throw everything out of the window, might not be very safe for this country. So it is very important that as we demand that the president and the government follows the law, we must also follow the law. But finally, and very importantly, as I had highlighted earlier, the situation in Homa Bay County regarding electricity power supply is actually very serious, and we expect our leaders to address it, and address it very urgently.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Ayub, for this opportunity today. First things first, I want to reach out to all nominated political leaders, MCAs, MPs, who are voted under the marginalized category. I am appealing to them that they need to focus on marginalized groups and minority groups, because people are suffering out here because of unemployment, poor roads, poor health infrastructure, and all this. So this is my appeal to them. Focus on marginalized community. That is why you are nominated or rather appointed in those positions. Number two, I'll speak to the youth. Kindly let us focus on being proactive citizens. Let us put our memorandum in parliament on bills that are coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Adam.
Thank you, Ayub. I want to take this opportunity and invite people to the Progress Plus Alliance. We are looking forward to engaging people and bringing in new ideas, especially the young people. Being 56.4% of the voter in 2027, our votes should count. Secondly, we all know that political parties in this country behave like employment bureaus, where each and every person in that political party must be affiliated to the party leader. It is not the case in the PPA party. Secondly, I want to call upon Kenyans. In our party, our strategy is gather all and scatter none. Let us come into a political party. It is the only vehicle that will give us a political solution in the forthcoming general election.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Galma Dido, thank you, public policy analyst joining us from Berlin in Germany. Good morning, thanks for joining us. Saddam Gashia is the SecGen, the Progress Plus Alliance Party. Advocates of the High Court, Naima Rajab and Askon Kamile, thank you. Mark Ouko, Youth Coordinator, the National Students Council. Davis Oluoch, a member of the Interparties Youth Forum. Many thanks for your time, much appreciated. By the way, my boss had loved the show and he sent in the following feedback. He said, extremely engaging show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be specific later, Ibrahim. Thanks to you too for waking up with us here on the broadcast. We appreciate your company. It's always valid throughout the week from Monday, which is holiday, but you choose from Tuesday to Friday today. Many thanks for your feedback here on the broadcast. We'll see you on Monday here on Daybreak. And thank you.